Welcome back to another episode of Inner Rhythm. My name is Maeve, and I am a second-year returning intern here at the Pollock-Krasner house. And I have the honor of interviewing David Slater today, who is not only my coworker, but the coworker to be interviewing. David was born in 1940 in Hampstead, New York, and he had lived the nomadic life throughout the 1970s and 80s and was involved in the AIM movement, American Indian movement, particularly in 1973 during Wounded Knee, as a provider of food and resources to the Pine Ridge Reservation during occupation. You were kind of a fugitive for about 5 years.
No, it was only like about 4 months. That
4 months?
That I was actually thought of myself as a fugitive.
Okay.
Until I met a medicine man in Portland, Oregon. He said, well, people are gathering in St. Paul, Minnesota for the trial, so I decided in wintertime, hitchhiked out there in the middle of the winter, and thought of myself living outside, in a make-do shelter, which I didn't do, but ended up spending 2 years there. But I found out that the charges against me had been dropped 2 weeks after I was charged. So I spent all that time thinking I was a fugitive, but in fact, no one was looking for me. But I lived for, 4 or 5 months with the idea that they'll be looking for me. Because this was during Nixon's administration, and Nixon had an aspect about him that was like Trump. He was vengeful. And I thought anything could happen, I could be going to jail for a long time. So anyway, that was my stance, but it was not 5 years, no.
Your experiences are nothing short of incredible and a testament to, quite frankly, modern American history. But you came to Sag Harbor in 1982. And knowing your history here at the Pollock-Krasner house, what is it like to be an artist here on the East End? And what about this place makes it such a beacon for you to create and have your creative process be based here?
Well, what's wonderful about the East End and here is there are so many artists here, and Jackson was one of the first to draw people out here, artists. Artists had been here before. No, he was not the first artist out here. But the residual of all of those people being here, when I first got here, there was still a lot of the abstract expressionists alive. The photograph that used to be here of all these people at the beach party, I knew a lot of those people. You could actually talk to people firsthand about Jackson. That was one thing that was wonderful. There was also a lot of opportunities for artists. So I was in art shows. Helen Harrison, great mentor of mine, she invited me to be in a show at Guildhall. She was always supportive. And I won an award at the Artist Members Show, and that kind of launched my career. I started to become known here. So it's a wonderful place to have your career grow and your reputation grow. So, and there were a lot of interesting people here. I met a lot of wonderful people here. My links to the East End and, go way back, 1945, 46, I first came out here. And this was after the war. You couldn't drive during the war. No, you couldn't get gas. So I remember coming out here and traveling around here. My aunt lived in Greenport. I spent more time actually in the North Fork than here. But this was just a wonderful place to be. I'd spent all this time traveling. I was living in California. I loved California, but it was not my home base. It was not my home culture. You know, I said I'm an East Coast person, so it was wonderful being here. You know, just jumping back into where I was born. That's so that fed a lot of things, and you know, I had knew a lot of artists, met a lot of artists. We'd go to the city. You know, I knew artists in the city. You know, the art network is vast. You know, I'm always running into people that I knew from long ago. So that's part of the reason.
I know we say on all of our tours here at the Pollock-Krasner house that there's something so special about the natural light out here. It immediately changed both Pollock and Lee's work when they moved out here. Does the light speak to you?
Yes, it does. Yeah, I mean, I wholeheartedly agree. You know that the light here is special. There's just something about the light, and it's a whole host of things. I love the ocean. My first couple of years here, I just would go to the ocean all the time. I had to go swimming. I had to go to the ocean every day. Because as a child growing up, I'd grown up by the ocean going swimming. So it was the fulfillment of a lot of things. My parents had passed away. I left California, you know, it was, I enjoyed it there, but I was ready to leave there. And I felt like I was back home. This is my home base. This is where I felt the most comfortable, I guess. So all of those factors add into your doing your artwork, to feel at peace with yourself, to walk around inside of your own brain, you know, and to be at home with yourself. That's why the East End is good for me, because this is home base for me.
Oh, I love that. As someone who lives here, this is my home too.
Mm-hmm.
It's so special to have everyone come together, come to the Pollock-Krasner house, watch In a Rhythm, and come visit David at the museum anytime, and come see a show in September. Oh. Well, let's jump right in. I started with a general but deep question, and that is, what brings you joy?
What brings me joy? Well, what brings me joy is actually getting to do what I want to do, or feel is my mandate to do. You know, you know, people say, well, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. And, you know, the artist's life these days, at least for me, is having to bypass all these obstacles that pop up, and just to maintain my course and direction. So when I'm able to do that, when I get all my ducks in a row, so to speak, that's what brings me joy. And the other thing that brings me joy is that when I meet people who you know, react to what I do, and there's a heart-to-heart relationship with that person, that's what brings me joy also.
Was there a moment in your early life when you knew you wanted to be an artist? Was there kind of an aha moment, or gradual?
Well, initially I did not really think about being an artist. My father was an artist. My father was, he was in World War I. He went to Syracuse University. He was actually a classmate of Bradley Walker Tomlin, one of the early abstract painters. But he ran smack up against the Depression. Now, he and my mother were married, but times were so tough that they said, well, we have to really postpone having children until this whole economic thing settles down. So, but my father, I would see my father upstairs working at his work table, and he was a commercial artist, illustrator, and he'd be doing drawings, and I would see him, but he was up in his space. he would make a joke that, oh, you know, the life of the artist was so tough that I discouraged my son from being an artist. So that I'd put a paintbrush next to his bassinet, and every time he would reach for it, I would slap his hand. This was a joke, you know what I mean? So, but that actually kind of was his attitude. Like, what, you don't want to be an artist. It's too hard of a life. So, but he was also an athlete. And other circumstances were such that in my early life, I wanted to be a soldier. World War II was going on. My uncle was in the Battle of the Bulge. He came back from the war, walked into the kitchen and reaches in his pocket. He's still in uniform, 1945, 46, I think, and throws these Nazi medals on the table. So the assumption I made was that, well, these are people he'd killed in battle. So my earliest years, I wanted to be a soldier. That's what I wanted to be. That's what a man did. A man became a soldier. And so, you know, my uncle, he never talked about it. He never explained what these medals were, but that was the implication to me. So, but then, you know, as time went on, you know, it had a lot to do with accommodating my father. So my father was big into athletics. He was a golfer. He played tennis. He was a skier, outdoor sportsman. But mostly he would, you know, he played golf. So growing up, in my middle years, I wanted to be an athlete. I tried to be an athlete, and I was terrible at it. I was a total failure at being an athlete. So I went to a Catholic school. It didn't have any art programs. When I went to high school, my second year there, I took a basic art course. And that's what got me hooked. I go, wow, this is really what I want to do. So I didn't really think about being an artist until, you know, quite a bit later.
So to move on to you've said to me in the past that your time in college was very formative years for you. And how did this prepare you for your art career later on?
Well, I went there in high school. I did artwork, but there was no concept of art history there. So I used to go to the library and just look at all the art books, and I was kind of self-educated in terms of art history. And initially I was very turned on by the Impressionists, you know, I thought that was great. And not just the Impressionists, but their lifestyle. I thought Van Gogh was fantastic. I thought his lifestyle was, you know, he's the man. But, you know, so my father said, well, yeah, you want to be an artist, but, you know, why don't you be a teacher? Because then you know, you have the summers off, you're working in the field you want, you know, you're making a living. So I applied and became a teacher. Or no, I'm sorry, I got accepted at Buffalo State Teachers College, as they called it, Buff State, and I studied art, you know, art, and in that program they had you study all aspects of art. So you studied jewelry making, you studied fabrics design, you studied painting, you studied architecture, you studied all kinds of art, photography. So, you know, I actually got into teaching, and I enjoyed teaching. I still basically consider myself a teacher. I consider this job I do here as a form of teaching.
It certainly is. Your body of work, one of the pieces behind you, spans so many topics of conversation, subject matters like protest, bodily autonomy, spiritualities, and often otherworldly dimensions. Mm-hmm. How do you want people to feel when coming into contact with one of your works and wrestling with these subject matters?
I would like them to be open to it. A lot of things are esoteric, or some people consider to be not worthy of people's attention. Spirituality, I have actually seen ghosts. People are very skeptical of that statement. But I want people to just at least be open to try to think about what's there. But I have an assumption that it's hard for them. So, and for years, I remember having a show one time, and someone said, "Oh, I really love your work, but you know what? Nobody's going to want to buy your work." So, the idea of working without rewards, without a reward, became, kind of self-isolating in some ways. Well, of course, you think, oh, of course people are not going to like this. But as time went on, people started to like my work. That's the weird thing. And sometimes I'm amazed that people like my work. Sometimes the subjects I'm dealing with, even I feel strange about them, But I'm being true to my inner self. I see my work as kind of autobiography. And, rather than sit down and write, which I've always had trouble doing, I express myself with images. And, that's, I think that's what a visual artist does. They're dealing with, seeing things and the sensations of seeing things. So, but this particular series I'm working on, and this show that I'm working towards, is all about a specific experience, in one form or another. Was always fascinated by Native American spirituality. I had Native American friends going all the way back to college. A friend of mine was a Seneca Indian, and really tough guy, He Merrill Bowen, his name was. He passed away, and we used to pal around. But he was a pretty tough, wild guy. But there was a bully in this one bar, and he would yell at people, and he would win his fights by just yelling at people and intimidating them. And I saw this friend of mine, Merrill, just look at him like this, and all of a sudden he just spit in this guy's face.
Oh.
And this guy goes, "Oh, I heard about you. You carry a knife." Anyway, so I had early contact with Native Americans, and when I went to school in Rhode Island School of Design, I hung out with several people who were Native American, and I gravitated to that philosophy and Native American spirituality. And so when the word came out by a man named Russell Means, who was one of the leaders of the American Indian movement, that he wanted people to come and help out, I hitchhiked out to South Dakota from Rhode Island and got involved in the whole scene there, got involved with the several actions that, put me in danger, I guess, put me in harm's way. But I spent, 3 weeks there, and then I was involved. Well, this painting that that is behind me refers to trying to get into Wounded Knee and break through the perimeter, which had been established by the government. These men here are not regular military; they're U.S. Marshals. And anyway, our goal was to try to crawl in when these flares they had sent up would go dark. We were supposed to inch forward, but we never got that far. We were being chased by a patrol of these men who were known as goons. Now, the word goon stood for Guardians of the Oglala Nation. Now, the band of Indians that were at Pine Ridge were known as the Oglala Sioux. So goons stood for Guardians of the Oglala Nation, goons, and they were brutal. They were killing people. On our way into being chased for about 10 miles by them, there were old burnt out cars along the road. They would catch people, burn their car. They were known to have killed something like 200 people who were opponents to them. So that is why it was an armed takeover, because they were his people were trying to kill the American Indian movement and the traditionals.
Well, you make a great segue into discussing your Wounded Knee series, 9 paintings which are testimonies of your involvement in AIM, the American Indian Movement, which will be the first ever set of works to be shown in the Pollock-Krasner House museum space, completed by a Pollock-Krasner grantee artist in September. And you've already spoken about this painting in particular behind you and your personal testimony to what happened. So is there any kind of way that you can give us kind of your creative process background? Did you kind of preliminarily sketch this beforehand? What was it like to approach this blank canvas, keeping in mind what those Indians had taught you?
Well, I would do both. I know Jackson Pollock never had a plan or a sketch or a drawing. But I did do some drawings and sketches at times. And sometimes I would do a drawing over and over again. And, but to me, the whole idea is getting started, Once I get into the process, all I have to do is really start to work. At first, it's sort of like a rational, intellectual thought, like, okay, you've got to change that color over there, or that form doesn't look right, I have to change it. So it's sort of a mechanical process, not a mechanical process, but, a correction of what my idea of the painting should be. And then once I start, like a door opens and all of a sudden I'm in another space and I don't really have to think that much along those terms. So instead of just saying, well, will I make this line here longer or shorter or darker or lighter or whatever, I just know what to do. And I always say that the painting starts to tell you what to do. And you could almost not close your eyes and paint, but you don't have to think about every single move that you make. And that's what I love, because to me that means I'm in the other part of my brain, the right hemisphere. The brain is in 2 hemispheres. The left hemisphere is verbal, rational, linear. The right hemisphere is nonverbal, it's visual. And so once you get into that space, you don't have to worry about things. It's just, you already know. Now, some people who are left-handed, they say that they're in that space all the time. But anyway, it doesn't take me long. And the more I work on a piece, the more the next day is easier. It's when you stop for a while and you have to start this whole process over again. So once you start the process of the up and down, right or wrong. What do they call that? The binary choices. You know, this is good, not good. Once you start doing that, then the painting, in a way, completes itself. But you have moments. You know, you lose your way sometimes. Sometimes it's, I shouldn't have gone there. So I mess it up and then I fix it up. I use other words to describe messing it up. I'm still not into comfortably swearing, but the F word is in there. So when you F it up, then you have to fix it up.
But that's so special because you're so in tune with yourself that is why you have a product of these pieces that are an extension of yourself. Why you see them as autobiographical is because you're so in tune with where you're precisely at in a work, and you can tell when a work is too much or not your vision versus when it is, and when it's coming from both that right part of your mind and from the left side of your conscience. So
well, I'm making it sound like it's easy and automatic. It never is, you know, and you can lose track of where you're going. You know, all of a sudden you have a nice area in a painting and you mess it up, you know, so you have to repair that. But and then at the end you go, it's hard to stop because you say, is this a piece of crap or is this a good painting? And that can go back and forth for years, you know. I can look at a painting of mine that everybody says, oh, I love that painting. And you go, gee, I guess maybe there is something there. Because you may have felt for years that, I think I failed on this painting. So the artist has, you know, a problem in some ways of deciding what's good and what's bad. And that's why it's very hard for me to stop painting. I've heard stories that de Kooning would, they'd be taking a painting out of his studio to hang in a show, and he'd be working on it as they were taking it out the door. And I'm kind of that way. Now Pollock was the opposite of that. He reached a certain point and say, I'm done now. So I don't know. It's really artists are always insecure because there's no set form of what is good and bad for artists. So they're always in unknown territory. So that's kind of what happens for me.
wow.
Sometimes I love the painting, and then the next day I look at it and go, ugh, what did you do? And then the next day I like it again. You know, it's a type of craziness, actually. I've heard it said that shamanism is really almost like a form of insanity.
Shamanism is a form of insanity. All right. So you spoke of Pollock and de Kooning briefly, and you've taught me so much about those artists and the time of abstract expressionism. And you've worked at the Pollock-Krasner house as our resident artist, local knowledge expert, and museum aide for about 10 years now.
Yes.
I imagine in those years you have spent truly contemplative moments in this barn studio with the remnants of Jack and Lee's respective tenures here. Mm-hmm. Right behind me, and there's your seat here. So reflecting on your career here, what have those contemplative moments looked like and felt like, and what does it mean to have your work shown on the property? Would a kind of full circle moment be a good descriptor of that for you?
Well, I'm very thrilled because, you know, at one time I was contemplating showing here, and I was told by the director here that, well, we only show artists who are not living anymore. So I feel honored that I'm still living and I'm going to be showing. I mean, that's not a criticism, but you know, I feel a connection with his and her spirit. I tell this story over and over again. I was here one day, you know, a few years back, and a group from Dix Hills, was here, a group of seniors, and I gave a private individual tour for them. At the end of the tour, this man comes up, he's tugging my sleeve, he says, "Hey, he really wants to talk to you." I go, "He does? You mean Jackson?" He said, "Yeah, Jackson wants to talk to you." So I go, that's interesting. So that night I had a dream. And it was one of these lucid dreams where it's just like me just looking right at you. And I'm going by this bench out here, and there are two figures on this bench who are wearing these black robes. You couldn't see their face, couldn't see their hands, but I thought it was Lee and Jackson. Now I've had other psychics come through here and say their ghosts are here. So I feel, I hear at the under the kindness of Jackson and Lee. And I guess they like me, or else they would have driven me out of here. One time a woman came in here and she was so freaked out by the vibe in here that she had to leave. She thought there were ghosts here, but she got a bad reaction from them. So obviously they didn't like her or something, but I feel at home here. I don't sit in here and talk to them or anything, but I just feel their presence. I honor them. I try to get other people to see what they saw and what they did. And that's part of my job. That's sort of a continuation of my teaching thing, to enlighten people. So that's, I've had really good experiences in here. And I meet wonderful people all the time, including yourself.
Oh, it's been so wonderful meeting you. But David, you've lived such an incredible life at 85, and we've only kind of scratched the surface of it talking right now. But what are some mementos or pieces of advice you want to tell younger artists and creatives?
Well, on the physical level, take care of your teeth, take care of your back, be open to a lot of things. Don't harbor grudges. Don't have strong likes and dislikes. The world is a beautiful place. We're all God's children, and you have to respect that. But defend yourself if you're attacked. What else? But don't go crazy and do something rash and bad. Try to do good at times. Try to help people. Try to love people. That's been my philosophy.
I think your art helps people. I think you've spent your whole life helping people as a teacher.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
That was everything I had. But thank you so much, David. And we get to talk every day.
Yes,
so it's
we
special
do.
that we
Yes,
have
we
it,
do. Yes, we do.
We have one moment of it on camera.
Well, you're somebody who can make the sun shine.
Oh, the sun's
Because
shining
you
right
have
now.
a good heart. You have a pure, good heart. Everybody goes, "Oh no, I don't." No, but everybody is self-critical, and but you are optimistic and idealistic, and that's what's wonderful about you.
Well, I think you have a lot of optimism as well. Even if some of your subject matter of your work is so heavy where it's even difficult to find where optimism is in such a moment as Wounded Knee. But I think you show a lot of optimism in your work. I love how you said it was a memoir because you are in this work in specific.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to point where you are?
Es mío. And that's me. Now these are people, this is the first day of the siege where the American Indian movement showed up, and they were supposed to go to Pine Ridge Reservation. And Pine Ridge Reservation is the central town and center of government of that reservation. And it was known that they were in conflict with the tribal president. He had a .50 caliber machine gun on the roof waiting for these people to show up because he just wanted to shoot them down. And they knew that. So the caravan of these people was moving, and then all of a sudden it took a left turn and it went to Wounded Knee, because Wounded Knee was this historic place of struggle for the Lakota people. So this is a photograph. All these cars and things were photographed by a helicopter. So I didn't see this scene myself. I saw a photograph of it. And so all these people are here with their cars. They're all armed. This man right here is taking a shot at the helicopter. But my scene was, we were supposed to go into Wounded Knee, cross this open space, and deliver food, because the government strategy was to starve out the Indians. So we had packs on our back of food. We were going to crawl in. And this is a flare, came down on a parachute, that illuminated the area, made the area bright as day. And we were to crawl in at that point. But they knew we were coming on this mission. There were 15 of us. There was a spy among us, one of whom I later identified, but when I was in jail, I was in the Pine Ridge jail, and these old men, we were in the drunk tank. There's like an inch of urine on the floor, basically. And these old men are speaking in Lakota, the Sioux language. And this man I was with, who I had trust in because he was a Vietnam vet, he says something in Lakota. And these old men say, "Where did you learn Lakota, Hippie Tonka? Where did you learn Lakota?" And he says, "I learned it in the Army." And I figured out later on that he was a spy. Because when I later on went to St. Paul, Minnesota, for where the trial was taking place, I walk in the door, and the director of security there looks over and he goes, "Oh, every day we see people come in here and we find out later they work for the FBI." And I'm walking in with this guy named Jeff. So everyone in the room turns around and looks at me and Jeff. And from that point on, there was suspicion that I was a spy. And at a later point, what's this older guy from the East Coast doing hanging around here? So at one point, they took me out on a little drinking spree, got drunk, and they were trying to determine whether I was a spy or not. And so I'm sort of laying on the ground, kind of after a case of beer drinking or a few shots, and they thought I was a spy, and they said, "If we find out you're a spy, we're going to scalp you." So I was concerned about that, but beyond that, there was a man named Vernon Bellecourt, who was one of the founders of the American Indian movement, was there, and he continued to accept me, and he called me brother. So he was, the saving grace there. But anyway, I lost my train of thought. But anyway, I spent 2 years in Minneapolis, and but that incident where they thought I was a spy, and one of the people who was accusing me of being a spy, I thought, the head of the security, turned out he was a federal agent as well. So he knew all about what was going to go on in the trials and everything, and so the prosecutors had ways of getting around all of their tactics. At one point, there was a sidebar where, Kunstler, a very famous attorney, and Mark Lane were talking to the judge, and a sidebar is you go up and you actually speak to the judge. So they pointed this door behind the judge. They silently indicate, open the door. So they open the door and these two FBI agents fall into the room because they were eavesdropping on our conversation. So anyway, it was a hectic experience, but I thought I wanted to record these things. And I have numerous paintings that I still have not done or been able to do yet. I might continue this series. But, you know, when the feds said, if you don't surrender in 72 hours, we'll come in and we're going to wipe you all out. And to emphasize this threat, they flew a B-52 like about 600 feet off the ground right over our heads. And a B-52 can drop these cluster bombs. They can kill everybody within like a quarter of a mile. So anyway, I have a lot of experiences that have as yet to be painted about, like being chased down the highway by these cowboys who knew we were part of the American Indian movement, and they were weaving in front of my truck that I was driving, this truck that was full of people in the back, you know, so I was responsible for their safety, basically. So I knew if they started to shoot, what was I going to do? So I had plans of like ramming their car and knocking them off the road. Anyway, these are all some experiences that I have not done paintings about yet.
Well, I hope those get painted. How many works do you think you've done in your entire career?
My entire career?
Paintings,
50,000.
drawings, 50,000.
Well, that's including drawings, sketchbooks. I used to go do figure drawing every week. I would go and draw the models. So that would produce at least 8 to 10 drawings. I did that for 10 years. I used to be very, you know, fanatically producing work. Now I spend 6 months or a year on a painting. So it's different, but I used to be very prolific. You know, I have flat files full of drawings, unframed drawings. My friend has framed a lot of my work. So it's hard to say how many pieces I've done.